I wanted to, first of all, thank Peter. I think, Peter's presentations are always mind-boggling. It's like, holy cow, how does he know all this stuff? But Nathaniel rather said when he introduced the session that things at COFAS had a certain repeatability to them, a certain familiarity to them, and so forth. And that's absolutely correct, except this year is indeed different. In the past, when I've had the opportunity to speak to this audience, I've primarily spoken about GPUs, because GPUs were, and still are, a very exciting development area being used in more and more applications, delivering incredible amount of compute per density and cost. It was just an amazing processor that had won the imagination and the applications of a lot of areas. That was clearly yesterday. The GPU is still important, but 2 years ago, we would talk about, at this conference, we would talk about maybe the x86 processor that's in all PCs. We definitely would talk about the GPU, and maybe we would talk about ARM, which was creeping into some other little things like IoT, excuse me, and laptops and smartphones. This year, we have gazillions of processors, and so what I'm going to do, which will be a little bit different, is I'm not going to drill down into any of the gates and flops and things that I like to do because there are just too many of them to cover. It would be a 2-day discussion to look at all these architectures that are available to us. So I don't need any introduction. This is my introduction. We're a market research firm. We track things. We advise companies that build semiconductors and software, and we've been doing it a very long time, as Brad will tell you. So this has been a great years, and I tried to find a demarcation point as to when I could say, okay, this is when it took off, and I really couldn't, and that's to be expected. But probably around the end of 2016, beginning of 2017 is when we started to see this avalanche of development come through. And these numbers, I made this slide, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 days ago. It's already wrong. Yesterday, last night, in fact, Intel announced 10 new processors in addition to the 25 that are already there. And in a few days, talking a little bit out of school here, AMD is going to announce 5 new ones. So we're adding 15 to the 25, so that means we're at 40 new processors, and that happened in a week. Now, it didn't happen in a week. The announcement happened in a week. But the point being is that there is a plethora of new processors coming out from all kinds of companies and a bunch of new types of processors. And that's going to be the main theme of my discussion, is that there are so many new processors that whatever you thought you knew, you don't know anymore, because the world is changing, and it's changing under our feet. Now, you should have known this was coming. We technologists have been talking to the world about Moore's Law and about the acceleration of impact that Moore's Law is going to have. And that message has been given to the world for over 20 years. So this shouldn't be a surprise that this accelerated curve that we've talked about for so many years is accelerating. And we're now up at this level. So things are changing very rapidly, and that's going to be challenging to people who have been comfortable doing what they used to do. Anything that uses electricity, this microphone, those lights, that camera back there, anything you can think of that consumes electricity is going to be smart. And what that means is it'll be able to make changes, do things differently than it normally does it, and it'll be able to communicate and be communicated with. And that's the critical part. So I hate to do this to an audience, but I can't help myself. How many of you have an Echo? Any of you? Okay, so you have a sense of what Echo can do. That's just one example of a smart thing, but look, it's touched consumers. And it will be a part, Echo or clones of Echo, will be a part of our lives that in 2 years, I won't ask who has an Echo. What we'll discuss is, did you hear what Alexa said yesterday? It'll be that level of familiarity, community, and just integrated into our lives in such a normal way, just like TV is now. The challenge is, are you going to be smart enough to be able to exploit it, and are you going to be smart enough to not be frightened by it? And that's a real serious challenge. And I hate to belittle our elders, but the older generation is going to have the greatest difficulty with this. The other thing is, we are in the leading edge of the AI revolution. This will be the second. Some people think it's actually the third, but I'm comfortable with the second. This will be the second AI revolution that we've had and that I've personally lived and worked through. It's a very exciting time. AI is going to so dramatically change our lives that when we look back at this point in time, 3 or 4 years from now, we'll say, oh my God, how did we ever survive then? Our quality of life and our complexity of life is going to be so dramatically different due to AI. And it's going to be very challenging to us. Now, a lot of people are saying, I'm worried about AI, I'm worried about the safety aspects of it. What if the robots decide that they don't need us and we have Skynet or whatever the threatening paranoid robot thing is? I don't believe that's going to happen, but if it does, so what? You're not going to be able to change. If that is our destiny, we are not going to be able to change that. But the more immediate problem is, I'm going to lose my job. Well, if you lose your job to AI, that means you were a biological robot. If all you can do is take a part from here and put it there, any machine can replace you. So my advice to people when they say, what about the jobs, is don't do robotic things. And that will be the biggest challenge that we have. And the challenge becomes one of cultural and politics more so than technology. It's one thing to advise people to don't do robotic jobs, but then you have to advise them as to what they should do instead, and how do you empower those people? Where do they get the education to do something different than what they're doing? We've had 3 major economic turmoils in my personal history where people have been displaced in their job, and there wasn't any support system for them. There wasn't any government program, there wasn't any social program, there wasn't anything to prepare, and if you couldn't prepare for it, there wasn't anything to recover from. And a lot of people, millions and millions of people, were thrown on their own. Now, a lot of people did amazing things. They started companies, they started consultancies, they started little manufacturing things, they did boutique things. The vast majority of them survived, adapted, and moved on. Those turmoils, those upsets that we have had are going to look like a splinter compared to what is coming if you don't prepare for it. The number of jobs will not be the same either, or the type of jobs. We're going to have to change the metric about the way we evaluate our lives and our country and our economy and get off of this unemployment percentage metric. It isn't going to work anymore. That's not going to be a unit of measurement that's going to define how healthy the economy is. And where things get done is also going to change. You saw Peter's slide, I love that slide, where activities are taking place with regard to a country and to a technology and so forth. Who would ever think, you have to assign a certain amount of bigotry to yourself to make this statement, but who would ever think that Arkansas would be a place where advanced AI, high-tech development would take place? I would never have imagined that. It just doesn't fit my model. Yet, a Chinese company went to Arkansas to buy an AI-based T-shirt making machine. Mr. Tech can't work a machine. Can you see any of these numbers? So 800,000 T-shirts a day. Now, if you extrapolate that to the population of the world, that means the world's going to get a new T-shirt every week. So I don't know why we need to build 800,000 t-shirts a day, but it's being done because of AI-driven machines designed in a little podunk state called Arkansas that, like I say, you just never would think that any of this could happen. The point of this is that everything around us is changing and you can't take anything for granted. There's a picture of me, self-portrait. So there's a new set of vocabulary. There's a whole bunch of new buzzwords that we're going to have to learn. And these won't be hard to learn. The difficulty with any technology and the difficulty with any measurement system that you use is getting a solid definition amongst the people who are using and creating that data. That's always been the challenge. I've been fighting that challenge for more years than Brad will even tell you. And it's always difficult because you have marketing people who want to impose their name on what a thing is. And so company A wants to call this thing black, and company B wants to call this thing oblong, and company C wants to call this thing flatostrat. So how, as a marketing measuring person, do you report that? Black, oblong, flatostrats? Maybe. But the problem is going to be is that you're going to have to be so smart that you're going to be able to have to penetrate marketing speak versus actual categorical speak. This is my favorite slide. We'll just sit and watch this. Isn't that clever? So what does that, all the data and all those stars, have to do with all these cats? And the point is that that's big data. And big data is the absolute foundation of AI. So you use horrendous amounts of data to learn something, and you use that learning to train an AI system. Not all AI systems are built from the same algorithm, but the algorithm is very, very similar. And at the bottom of it is a thing called a convolutional neural network, which is just a way of running filters, basically. Think about it like that. So if you think about it like filters, you can see that if you have enough pictures of cats or enough pictures of stars or enough data about credit card transactions, that you can learn certain things. And we have some disturbing political side effects of this with Facebook and the Russians. So the data size is a big factor to the quality and the accuracy of how well you can train your AI system. But once you've done it, then you can do amazing things. And so at the bottom one, where it shows how a cat morphs into a tiger. And so one of the things we've been able to do with AI and computer graphics is we've been able to learn styles of artists, for example, and then take a picture and say, make this picture a Picasso. And it does that type of thing there. It morphs that into a tiger or into a Picasso or into a Matisse or anything else. The other development that's taking place, in addition to AI, but is also influenced by AI, is blockchain distribution. And blockchain is going to have a humongous impact on the world in so many ways that it just makes your head hurt to try and think about all the ways it can be. Now, blockchain, which is tightly associated with cryptocurrency, has a troubled past because it came out of the dark net. It was used for nefarious things to hide the nefarious things that one was doing. But the architecture of blockchain is so profound that it is going to permeate every industry there is. Already you'll find CAD companies, CAD users, who are using blockchain for distributed collaborative work. This gives you an enormous amount of security, things that people were worried about putting their data in the cloud. That problem goes away. It gives you access anywhere you want. It gives you traceability. It gives you control. It's just a whole lot of benefits come from it. It's a little complicated to understand. And then sitting on the side of it, depending upon what your activity is, are the transaction verifiers. These are called miners. You've heard of them, no doubt. And so the people who are doing transaction verification, i.e. miners, have a separate income stream because they get paid for every transaction that they verify. And so maybe you've heard about the cryptocurrency miners building these big computers and so forth, monitoring various things. Now, the other part, which is a difficult thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency, is just as I was telling you about the explosion of processors, there's an explosion of coin. And so every week we are getting at least one, if not 5, new cryptocurrency coins. Obviously, they can't all survive. Some of them are going to become very specialized. Perhaps the best one known is Bitcoin. Ethereum is maybe number 2. But we're going to have that chaos for a while we try and figure out what this is. The people who are going to be most opposed to this are going to be governments and banks, and then all the other middlemen, like insurance salesmen and home real estate brokers and people who are exchanging documents from one place to another, and that's basically a robotic job if ever there was one. They don't really add any value except that they aggregate documents and get them from point A to point B. That all goes away with blockchain. We don't need those people anymore. So who's going to train them to do something else? I mentioned AI already. I'm not going to go through that again, except that if you get a copy of these slides, look at the constellation of applications that are in that chart. I should have stayed on it just a bit longer. And then cryptocurrency mining, I've already spoken about that, so I don't need to belabor that anymore. So these are buzzwords, and you're going to have to learn them, and you're going to have to learn the peripheral buzzwords so that you can recognize that when I'm speaking about this, I am really speaking about this. And if you don't get that linkage, you're going to be frustrated and think perhaps the person you're trying to communicate with is either speaking a different language or that they're trying to boondoggle you, they're trying to trick you in some way. So, amazing opportunities. Now, you can always spot an opportunity. Anybody who has done any study of engineering knows that the value of information is in the deltas. When you have a steady state, that's boring and nothing's going on. It's the change, it's the chaos that gives you information and gives you opportunity. And we are at such a point of opportunity now, it's just unbelievable if you have the courage to go for it. And that's, again, the challenge to getting out of your comfort zone, getting away from doing what you like to do because that's the way you've always done it, and take a risk and take a chance and do something different. It's easy advice. It's really hard to do. I'm going to now make you go crazy with a chart that's not quite as fine as Peter's was, but it's a list of names, and I just want you to look at the quantity of names, that's all. Well, I got out of sync here. Hang on. Here's the names. These are processor companies, and the point to this is, do I have a laser on this? I do. And does it work? It does. This is the list. Sorry. This is the list that's, to me, the most interesting, because none of those companies existed 2 or 3 years ago. And that list is not complete. That's all I could conveniently stick in there. So we have had 25 new companies spring up to build 25 different types of processors. Not ARM-based, not x86, not GPU, not DSP, something totally different. And they're being called things like, excuse me, neuroprocessors. That's the easiest one I can come up with because they have all kinds of different names. And you'll see, make sure I can see. Yeah, so if I can get to it, I don't know how good my aim is. Can you see that company? Google? So Google is building a customized, proprietary AI processor. You say, okay, well, Google can do anything they want. Of course they would do that. You say, well, wait a minute. If you know anything about building semiconductors, you know that it's not cheap. You don't do it quickly, and it costs a lot of money. And who are you going to sell this to get your investment back? Well, Google's not going to sell it. They're just going to use it themselves. They're building this incredible AI processor for all of their servers to do incredible AI things. Now, in one sense, that should scare the bejesus out of you. You say, holy cow, they're building a brain that's going to do what? Replace my brain? Make my brain obsolete? We don't truly know what they're going to do with it, except that when I say, Alexa, what's the temperature of Moscow? She tells me. So I had a little contest with some friends the other day, and I said, Alexa's smarter than you are. And the person I said that to got very offended and said, that's bullshit. That's just a machine. That's not smarter than me. I said, okay, so what's the state capital of Yabanza? What's the temperature of the sun at this exact moment? What's the temperature of the Pacific? And I just reeled off a bunch of crazy goddamn questions that no one in the world would know the answer to. But Alexa knows the answer to them, right? So that's how come Alexa, who is now getting a personality, knows more than you do. And that's just a small example. That's just one little audio device that is going to listen to us. So all of these companies are building customized, specialized machines. IBM kind of led the parade. IBM was one of the first companies to get out there and build a neuroprocessor. And they did that with a small semiconductor company called Micron many, many years ago. And they've evolved and moved on to that, and they've made Watson, and I'm sure everybody in the world knows about Watson. Sorry. And so, and by the way, speaking of IBM and being out there, IBM is the first company to build and make available a quantum computer, something that we've fantasized about for I don't know how many years. They're doing it. That's another type of processor class that's coming forward that I used to think I knew how to program things. I can't imagine how the hell you program a device that has ones and zeros simultaneously, but a quantum machine does. So that's it. I think I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, which I always like. We're going to have a roundtable Saturday to go into this a little bit more detail. Like I said, this is one of the first times I've spoken where I didn't get into the detail, and the problem is there's too many moving parts and too many components involved to do that. So if you don't have anything better to do Saturday at 11 o'clock, come on over. First come, first serve. And that's me. And I thought that we were going to do Q&A, but I'm not sure if, I'm looking for, who's in charge here, by the way? Is it Nathaniel or Brad, or is there anybody in this room in charge? No? Well, we're all in charge. Okay, cool. This is a blockchain then. Anyway, I thought just in case you might ask, so here's some numbers. You have to have numbers. And I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them. Except that I want to call your attention to that number. 200 this year. If we're all together again next year, that number will be more than doubled. That's the fastest growing industry, if I can call that, technology that we have ever seen. And it's going to change our lives. If you thought the PC changed your life, and think about that going back to 1981 when the PC was introduced, and we couldn't in 1981 really imagine how great the PC was going to be and how much it was going to change and influence our lives. If you thought that was good, AI is going to be 1,000 times better. Quote me on that. And there's the chart that you've all been waiting for.